Goodman. There she is, at Democracy Now! Radio and television. And WPHT radio talk show host Michael Spurkanich. He's based in the city of brotherly love, and he's come to the Big Apple tonight. I want to ask you both, is there a lot, let me go with you, Amy. When you're on the radio, is there a lot, where is there more interest? Is it in the Middle East between Israel and Hezbollah, or is it between the United States and who we're fighting over there?
I mean, I think it's all together, and the kind of people that we're hearing from are people like Yonatan Shapira, who is an Israeli Air Force captain, who's saying that Israeli soldiers should refuse to participate in this. There are a lot of Israeli peace voices that are out there that are not being heard. People like Malka Goldwasser, whose son Ehud Goldwasser is one of the 2 soldiers who was kidnapped by Hezbollah, and she's calling for peace. She's saying war is not the answer.
So you're for a ceasefire now?
I mean, I think there's no question.
How many here would like to see a ceasefire immediately? How many would not like to have a ceasefire right now? Okay, I can't find anybody to say. Michael, you in Philly, how's the debate going on the Middle East part of it? Israel versus its enemies in Lebanon.
It would be Israel versus the situation in Iraq, and Israel has far more attention. But the proper question would be Mel Gibson versus the situation in Israel. And I hate to tell you, there'd probably be more interest in what's going on in the Mel Gibson controversy.
Why?
Because it's got all the elements, you know. You got a Hollywood celebrity apparently hammered, saying anti-Semitic things, proof positive in some folks' way of looking at this for all the concerns they had when he was doing Passion of the Christ. And I think that whole pop culture mentality is something that's even more pervasive than the world events in the Middle East.
How many here think that Mel Gibson's drunkenness and comments are more important than the war in the Middle East?
MSNBC does.
I haven't mentioned it all day, brother. Let me ask you, why do you think it's a big story? Why is it a bigger story than war?
Well, I think that folks are unfortunately fatigued by what they're watching on television with all the violence in the Middle East, the situation in Iraq having gone on for 3 years. And by the way, let me be clear, I'm not defending it and saying that Mel Gibson is a more important story. I don't think that it is. But the reality is
it's not a candy story. It's just too easy to eat and enjoy.
Absolutely, especially in the
summer.
summer.
Agree, why you're on the air, why do you think people would go to a story that's so high concept, so easy to understand, rather than a difficult problem we have in the war in the Middle East and in Iraq?
I think people deeply care about what's going on in the Middle East and Iraq. I think we're talking about our sons, our daughters, our mothers, our fathers. I look at young people here and I think about the kids in Qana that were just bombed in this Israeli airstrike. It's not enough for Israel to say we're sorry when the cabinet votes to expand the ground offensive. We are talking about living in the 21st century. There has got to be an answer other than war. It is only going to make Israel unsafe. It's only going to make the United States unsafe.
How does Israel make itself safe when it's got Hezbollah on its border?
Negotiation is the only answer. It's true for Iraq.
What's the base of negotiating with a country?
It's true for Gaza and West Bank.
Michael, you want to get in this?
Yeah, how do you negotiate with folks who are going to send missiles in your direction from the middle of a civilian neighborhood? I mean, it's unfortunate. It's terrible what transpired. But the reality is there's no other way to combat terrorism, and that's who we're combating.
You don't negotiate with your friends. You negotiate with your enemies. You come up with viable solutions that both can live with. What we're talking about is not even Hezbollah. We're talking about more than 700 Lebanese civilians, overwhelmingly civilian. Did they deserve to die over these last few weeks?
So as the Katyusha rockets are shot into Haifa, the Israelis should do what? Nothing? They should sit on their hands?
It is terrible that the Katyusha rockets are flying into Israel, and it is terrible that Israel is bombing Lebanon. Right now, we're talking about civilians, and Israel has the capacity to call for a ceasefire, and the United States should not be sending bombs to Israel, which is exactly what they did, even over the objections of one of the British cabinet members. They should not be sending bombs to Israel. They should be demanding an immediate ceasefire. This is about our national security, and it's about the national security of countries all over the Middle East.
Who wants to ask a question of one of these people? You have a question, miss?
Yes.
Address it to Amy or to Michael.
Okay. Hi, my question is for Michael. You speak about how American citizens would be more interested in this controversy or in the war in the Middle East that's currently going on if there was some celebrity figure. Do you think that the news plays any role in kind of hiding or not totally presenting the various historical perspectives
No, I don't blame the media. I think that MSNBC, by way of example, is going to give you whatever it is you want to watch. All they're there to do is fulfill your appetite. I'm just making a point that I think that it's a sad commentary on the United States, that Chris asks the question about which is there more interest, the situation in Iraq or the situation in Israel, and my response is neither. The Mel Gibson story is the story of the day.
No,
I'm not proud of that, but that's the reality.
Americans are so much smarter than that, and Americans are compassionate people. And if they saw the images on the ground, if they saw people, kids dead on the ground in Lebanon, if they saw Israeli kids dead on the ground, they'd say, no, this is not the answer. We need a media in this country
Amy,
that is open to the voices of peace.
I didn't respond to something that you said before that I'd like to. I hope that you'll agree with me that the 50 civilian deaths, most of whom are children, is the fault of Hezbollah, not of Israel, because Hezbollah used those kids as human shields. Would you agree with that?
I would say that right now we are talking about terroristic tactics on both sides, and we, talking in a civilized way, can be a model for how this has to be negotiated. Listen, ultimately, face it. It's going to be negotiated. It's just a matter of how many kids have to die.
Let me give Michael a chance. Okay, what's your take on Mel Gibson?
Mel Gibson, do I have to say allegedly?
No, whatever you want to say. You're bringing him up twice.
He's a drunkard and an anti-Semite. And I feel like this is confirmation of what many of us believe. And by the way, Chris, I say this as a Catholic who enjoyed, to the extent anyone could enjoy, Passion of the Christ. But I always had concerns. You know, seed of the Father. He didn't disavow those comments to my level of satisfaction when Dad went off on that rant. And the reality is, wait a minute, when you're drunk, except for if you're slobbering over the company secretary, when you're drunk, I say you say things that you really believe.
Oh, I believe it's truth serum. We know that. We'll be right back with Michael Smirkani speaking the truth soberly. And Amy Goodman. Tonight is as I said about 1,000 times tonight, the 10th anniversary of MSNBC.com. We're here at Rockefeller Plaza, one of the most interesting, iconic spots in New York, where Today's Show always does this broadcast. And at the top of this building, I think you're looking at pictures of the party that's going on at top of the Rock. We're going to be up there later. I want to keep these questions going because we're talking, it's like being in the world community here, right near the UN here, and we see all these flags up here, and we're going to go to you, sir.
Hi, my question is, because this entire rivalry, if you call it that, is fundamentally religious, you know, it's something deep-seated in these people's beliefs, is this problem ever going to be fixed?
Well, I just wanted to say one thing before I answer that question. Since you said all the executives are up at the top of the Rock, I want to congratulate you, Chris, on 10 years of MSNBC, but I wish standing with you was Phil Donahue. He shouldn't have been fired for expressing an anti-war point of view on the eve of the election. His point of view and the people he brought on were also
I don't know what the reasons
important.
were, but I doubt it was that.
Well, we have the NBC memo. That was a secret memo that came out that said they didn't want him to be the face of this network, an anti-war face at a time when the other networks were waning.
I think you might talk about
to answer that question.
Remember me when you answer it. What?
Yeah, the answer to the question is, and I say this as one with 4 kids, I don't think it's going to be solved in our lifetime because they are raising their kids to hate and want to kill our kids. And that's the reality. And until those madrasas are solved and they stop preaching hatred against the Jews and the Americans, we're never going to get beyond this.
Well, if being against the war was a problem here, I'd have been out of here about 4 years ago because I've been against this war from day one. It hasn't cost me a job.
You, Chris,
so let me just tell you, they're not against anti-war people.
Also.
But there's always conservative tendencies in corporate America. You know that. Yes, sir.
For there to be a ceasefire, why doesn't Hezbollah just return the 2 Israeli soldiers?
Well, this is about a negotiation. I mean, I'm not here to condone Hezbollah. I'm not here to condone the state of Israel's tactics right now. I think what we have to talk about is a negotiated settlement. We're talking about the world at stake right now. Hezbollah has managed to do something that no one thought they could do before. They have united Shia, they've united Sunni, they've united Maronite Christian. The levels of Hezbollah popularity in Lebanon are skyrocketing because the people of Lebanon are being bombed. It's indiscriminate. It's civilian.
Mike,
it's not about who we support. It's about what is possible in the world today. What are we willing to see an explosion in the Middle East like we've never seen before? I think we have to be civilized about this. I don't care your political persuasion. I think we care about peace.
If I can get in on this, the short answer is you ask an excellent question. There's so much who shot John relative to what goes on in the Middle East. but not with the last 20 days. I mean, the reality is that this entire war was begun because Hezbollah captured those 2 soldiers by crossing the line, didn't return them, still haven't returned them.
Negotiation, settlement, ceasefire. That's what is going to save the lives of hundreds of people.
Let me ask everybody one last time. How many here are completely for Israel's way of fighting this war? 100%. How many think how many have a little problem or a big problem with the way Israel's fighting this war? How many are with Hezbollah? I think that was muffled.
I also
Anyway,
encourage the
Amy
networks
Goodman,
to
thank
cover
you.
the peace movement. 2,000 people marched in Tel Aviv last weekend. People are saying no to war, both in this country and in Israel.
Thank you for
Amy
having
Goodman,
me.
thank you very much for democracy. And Michael Spirkanis, the best voice in Philadelphia. Listen to that accent. We'll be right back with the people. Right after this with MSNBC.com's 10th anniversary from Rockefeller Plaza.